Ethan strutted into our apartment like a man who had just conquered the world. He was wearing a tailored suit, new designer shoes, and a smug smile that made my stomach turn. He tossed his luxury duffel bag onto the couch, the metallic logos flashing under the lights. "Thanks for the upgrade, babe," he said, grinning like he'd done me a favor. I stood there with my arms crossed, watching him soak in his fantasy. I couldn't help it. I laughed, a soft, amused laugh that made him freeze. He turned, frowning. "What's so funny?" he snapped. I tilted my head and smiled, calm and unbothered. "You really have no idea what you've done." His eyes narrowed, clearly confused. He thought I was still the woman who'd turn a blind eye. "Ever caught someone thinking they were smarter than you?" "I'm Sarah. I'm 34. I work in cybersecurity. And my soon-to-be ex-husband? He just tried to scam the wrong woman." From the outside, our life looked polished. We lived in a sleek downtown apartment. We went to the right parties. And I had a solid career in cybersecurity, one of those fields that demands precision, discretion, and constant vigilance. Every day I dealt with real threats, data breaches, identity theft, and complex financial fraud. It was high pressure, but I loved the challenge. I built my career from the ground up, worked long hours, earned my certifications, and moved up in a field where few women reached the top. Ethan, on the other hand, was the opposite of stability. He had charisma, sure, people were drawn to him. He had big ideas, startups, crypto investments, influencer schemes, but none of them ever lasted. He bounced from one plan to the next, always convinced the next one would hit. Rent, utilities, groceries. Every month, it was me making it happen. I didn't mind at first. I believed in him. I thought he was a dreamer, a creative visionary who just needed time. But over the years, the cracks started showing. He kept financial secrets. I'd ask about our budget and he'd spin it around on me, accusing me of being controlling or paranoid. I'd find strange charges on our joint card and he'd gaslight me into thinking I'd forgotten something. He refused to get a steady job but always had enough money for new sneakers, nights out, or surprise. 7 years. That's how long I kept telling myself we were building something together, that if I just held things down a little longer, it would all pay off. That once one of his plans succeeded, we'd finally be even. I excused his behavior to friends. I told myself love meant compromise. But deep down, I knew I was the one keeping it all together, while he enjoyed the freedom I'd worked to provide. And still, I stayed. I cooked, cleaned, worked, and supported. Even when the silence between us grew longer and the lies more frequent, I didn't walk away. I told myself marriages went through tough seasons, that Ethan just needed one win to prove everyone wrong. But the truth was uglier. He had no intention of stepping up. He liked the life I'd built for him too much to contribute. Then, one night, everything shifted. It was 2 a.m. I was asleep upstairs. Ethan thought I was out cold. What he didn't know was that, as a cybersecurity professional, I'd long ago installed activity monitoring protocols on my work laptop. It was standard for security testing. But that night, it exposed him. He snuck downstairs, opened my work laptop, and accessed one of my credit card accounts. A card he had no business touching. He copied the information, snapped photos with his phone, and crept back into bed like nothing had happened. The next morning, I checked my alerts, as I always did. Except this time, I saw a flood of charges totaling nearly $50,000, 0 cents. First-class flights, designer brands, 5-star hotels. My breath caught in my throat, but not from panic, because the card he used? It wasn't personal. It was a decoy one tied to a training simulation for fraud detection. Every single charge triggered an alert to the authorities. Ethan had just turned himself into a live case study. That's when I realized this wasn't just betrayal. It was the final, spectacular mistake of a man who had always underestimated me. It started with little things. Ethan had always been a talker, but lately his conversations had shifted. Over dinner, he'd casually mention places he wanted to visit. "When we're in Paris next month," he said one night, swirling his wine like we had first-class tickets waiting. I raised an eyebrow, Paris? I asked. He just smirked. I'm just saying it's time we treated ourselves. I chalked it up to his usual fantasy talk, the kind that never actually led to action. But then came the comments about investments. He'd talked about some new opportunity in crypto. He'd said that before, but this time, he seemed more confident. Like he had a plan. He wasn't asking me to front the money. That's what stood out. He acted like he already had access to it. My instincts twitched. I hadn't seen anything unusual in our shared accounts, but something felt off. One night, I woke up around 1:30 a.m. The hallway light was on. I slipped out of bed and walked toward the glow, stopping just short of my office door. Through the crack, I saw him. Ethan, sitting at my desk, my work laptop open in front of him. I stood there, silent, watching as he took out his phone and snapped a few photos of the screen. He didn't see me. I stepped back into the shadows and waited until he turned the light off and tiptoed back to bed. When I asked about it the next morning, he didn't even flinch. "Oh, I was just checking an email," he said, stretching. "Didn't want to wake you." I nodded and let it go. But I made a mental note. He never used my work laptop. Ever. Later that morning, as I sipped my coffee, I got the first alert. Then another. And another. I opened my phone and pulled up the account tied to my cybersecurity training platform. The dummy card I used to teach corporate clients how to monitor and respond to fraudulent activity. Overnight, it had been charged nearly $50,000, 0 cents. Flights to Paris, bookings at high-end hotels, charges at luxury department stores, designer watches. It was all there, perfectly itemized, as if someone were putting together the ultimate getaway fantasy. Only this wasn't fantasy. This was real, and Ethan's digital fingerprints were all over it. I didn't panic. I didn't scream. I didn't even wake him. I just sat there, scrolling through the transactions, a strange calm settling over me. He thought he was being clever. He thought he'd pulled one over on me. But what he didn't know, what he never bothered to ask, was that the card he'd stolen wasn't just fake. It was monitored, rigged, built to catch fraudsters in real time. Every single charge triggered a silent alert, not just to me, but to a federal investigator assigned to the account. Ethan hadn't stolen from me. He'd handed himself to the authorities on a silver platter. And he had absolutely no idea. I sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, staring at the list of transactions growing by the hour. My expression didn't change. I wasn't angry. I was amused. Because the card Ethan had used, the one he thought was some secret stash of wealth, was a plant. It was part of a cybersecurity training program I designed. A dummy account. A baited hook. And he had bitten hard. Every charge he made had triggered automatic fraud alerts. Each alert went to a back-end system, monitored by federal cybersecurity agents. I had personally set it up for corporate fraud training. It was built to simulate a real-world scenario, logging every transaction, every IP address, every swipe. Except this time, it wasn't a simulation. Ethan had turned himself into a case study. I picked up the phone and called Chloe, my lawyer and longtime friend. "You're not going to believe this," I said. By the time I finished explaining, she was wheezing with laughter. Wait, he stole the dummy card? The one that auto-flags everything to law enforcement?" "Exactly," I said. "Every dinner, every designer bag, every mile flown, it's all been logged and flagged." Chloe took a breath, still giggling. "Sarah, this is gold. Don't confront him yet. Let him build the whole house of cards. Then we knock it down." I agreed. There was no rush. Ethan had made his move. Now it was my turn to wait. Over the next 3 days, I tracked his every step from my laptop. First-class flight to Paris, Hotel George V, dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant in Rome, shopping sprees at luxury boutiques. He was living his dream, funded entirely by what he thought was stolen money. But really, he was just deepening the evidence pile. On the third day, I found a note on the counter, neatly written in Ethan's handwriting. Taking some time for myself, don't wait up. He even signed it with a smiley face. I stared at the note and smiled. He thought he was escaping. He thought he was clever. But in reality, he was tracing a digital breadcrumb trail straight to law enforcement. I printed the note and added it to a growing folder of documentation. Chloe had already started drafting the legal steps. Meanwhile, Agent Keller, my contact at the cybersecurity division, was watching the transactions in real time. "We don't even realize he's handing us a timeline," Keller had said during our first call. "We'll have enough to build a rock-sell case." So I waited. Calm. Controlled. Every hour, Ethan dug a little deeper. Every receipt he uploaded to social media, every swipe of the dummy card, every international card traced back to his phone. It was all evidence. He was building the case for me. He thought he was outsmarting me, but what he didn't realize was that this wasn't a game he could win. Because the moment he used that card, he stopped being my husband. He became a cybercriminal. And I knew exactly how to catch one. When Ethan strutted back into our apartment a week later, he looked like a walking billboard for fraud. Head to toe in designer brands, sunglasses still on indoors, wheeling in 2 monogrammed suitcases. He dropped his duffel bag on the couch with a smug thud and stretched like he'd just returned from saving the world. "Thanks for the upgrade, babe," he grinned, pulling off his coat and tossing it onto a chair. I stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, leaning casually against the counter. "How was Paris?" I asked, my voice neutral. "Incredible," he said, running his hand through his gelled hair. "You should have seen the rooftop bar at Hotel Cost. Champagne like liquid gold. We hit Rome too, at this place with a truffle menu." "Truffles, Sarah. You'd have loved it, if you ever let loose." I didn't respond, just listened, watched. Every brag was another confession. He wandered into the kitchen, opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and leaned on the counter across from me. "Gee, you know, you really should have told me about that credit card," he said, shaking his head like I'd committed the real crime. "Imagine all the fun we could have had if you hadn't been so uptight about money." I kept a straight face. "Is that right?" "Oh, come on," he laughed. "It's not like you're struggling. You make more than enough. I figured you'd see it as a surprise gift, a little break from your serious life." Serious life. That's what he called paying the bills, protecting our identities, and keeping his name off collection notices. My phone, sitting silently nearby, was recording every word. His voice, his arrogance, his detailed travel log. Neatly captured. I picked up my phone and typed a quick text to Chloe. "He's back." Her reply came seconds later. "Perfect. I'll alert Keller." Ethan was still talking, now showing off the watch he bought in Rome, twisting his wrist so the kitchen light hit it just right. "Retail therapy, babe. You should try it sometime." I watched him silently, nodding slightly, letting him believe he was in control. He wasn't. That evening, I received a message from Agent Keller. "Timeline is solid. All transactions are confirmed. Surveillance logs match his travel." He was under full federal observation now. Every purchase had been flagged. His phone was being tracked. His social media posts, a boasting about 5-star dining and yacht rentals, were now evidence. Later, as Ethan flopped onto the couch and scrolled through his phone, still glowing with delusion, I stepped outside onto the balcony. The city buzzed below, but I felt still, steady. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting. I was leading. The surreal calm that washed over me wasn't numbness, it was clarity. I wasn't a woman clinging to a broken marriage. I wasn't a victim of financial betrayal. I was the architect of my own justice. Inside, Ethan laughed at a meme and called out for me to bring him a drink. I didn't move, just smiled to myself. Let him enjoy his last few moments of freedom. The next day, Ethan spent the morning lounging in his silk robe, sipping espresso and scrolling through his phone like he didn't have a care in the world. The designer watch still glittered on his wrist, catching the sunlight as he propped his feet on the coffee table. "You know," he said, smirking over the rim of his mug, "I think I was born for this lifestyle. Maybe in another life I was royalty." I gave a light laugh, standing across the room with a notebook in hand, pretending to jot down a shopping list. "You certainly adapted fast." He winked. "You make it easy, babe. It's like the credit card fairy just dropped in and said, 'Have fun, Ethan.'" I glanced up. "You really think you got away with it?" He laughed again, not catching the undertone. "Of course. Nobody flagged anything. No alerts, no angry phone calls." "I've got a gift, Sarah. Charm and timing." I pressed record on my phone, tucked discreetly inside my cardigan pocket. "So, tell me," I asked, moving to sit across from him. "How did you even know which card to use?" Ethan grinned. "Simple. I waited until you were asleep, then snuck downstairs. Figured the laptop was safer than your purse. Found one labeled training account or something. Thought, perfect. If it's for work, maybe it won't be noticed right away." I nodded suddenly, hiding my disbelief at how confidently he admitted it. "And you didn't think I'd notice $50,000 missing?" He shrugged. "I figured you'd see it eventually, but maybe you'd think it was a system error or a delayed reimbursement. You deal with that stuff all the time." I leaned back, arms crossed. "You really don't know me at all." He chuckled. "Come on, Sarah. You've always been the forgiving type." The recording continued. Meanwhile, Chloe and Agent Keller had everything in place. Over the past 48 hours, they'd built a watertight case. Transaction logs, travel receipts, the audio file from the night before, all tied neatly together. Agent Keller had coordinated with local police for a quiet approach. No sirens, no drama, just precision. At 3:17 p.m., there was a knock on the door. Ethan looked up, confused. "You expecting someone?" "Actually, yes," I said, standing up and walking to the door. I opened it slowly to reveal Agent Keller, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. "Good afternoon, Miss Foster," Keller greeted. "Is Mr. Ethan Miller home?" I stepped aside, my voice calm. "He's right inside. Make yourselves comfortable." The officers entered. Ethan stood up, alarmed. "What's going on?" Agent Keller pulled out a document. "Mr. Miller, you're under investigation for multiple counts of credit card fraud and unauthorized use of financial accounts. We're asking you to come with us for questioning." Ethan's face drained of color. "Wait, what? No, this has to be a mistake." The officers approached, and he instinctively backed up. "Sarah, say something." I crossed my arms. "You thought I wouldn't notice. You thought wrong." His bravado cracked instantly. "Babe, come on. You can't let them do this. We're not doing anything I didn't already approve." The officers gently took his arms. "Sir, please cooperate." Ethan turned to me one last time, eyes wide with betrayal. "You set me up." I didn't flinch. "No, Ethan. You set yourself up. I just documented the evidence." As they led him out the door, his designer bag sat untouched by the couch, a gaudy reminder of everything he thought he could steal. The door shut with a quiet finality. The apartment fell still again. I stood there for a long moment, letting the silence wrap around me. No shouting, no gaslighting, no explanations, just peace. I picked up my phone and texted Chloe. "He's gone." Her reply came seconds later. "We're ready for the next phase. Let's finish this." And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was surviving my marriage. I felt like I was winning my freedom. The next morning, Chloe called with an update. Her voice was sharp and calm, as always. "He's already trying to spin the story," she said. "He's claiming you gave him permission to use the card." I let out a dry laugh. "Of course he is. You're saying it was a misunderstanding, that you let him access the account and he thought it was fair game. He forgot I record everything. The card was labeled fraud simulation." "I know. And that recording from yesterday, where he brags about sneaking onto your laptop and using your work card?" She paused, amused. "That's Exhibit A." By the time Ethan sat down for his first formal interview with the investigators, his lies were already falling apart. Agent Keller had the purchase logs, the metadata from the photos on his phone, the timing of his travel booked directly after accessing Sarah's laptop. And then, of course, the recording, his arrogant confession handed over like a gift-wrapped admission of guilt. "You have no way out," Chloe said. "They're charging him with fraud, identity theft, and unauthorized access to financial information." "Good," I replied, sipping my coffee. "Let him explain his way out of that." Within days, word started to spread. Our mutual friends, co-workers, and acquaintances began hearing about his arrest. Some messaged me privately, shocked. Others weren't surprised at all. The most telling moment came when I got a message from Nicole, the woman I'd long suspected he was cheating with. It was one sentence. "You win." I didn't reply. Ethan's social media went quiet. His influencer-style posts disappeared. His carefully curated image of world-traveling entrepreneur collapsed under the weight of federal charges. The designer watch, the Paris photos, the hotel selfies. They were now part of a digital paper trail used as evidence. And his bank accounts were frozen. The luxury goods, seized. The flights he had booked for another getaway, canceled. Whatever fantasy he'd been living was over, replaced by cold reality. Then a call came through on my phone. Blocked number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Sarah." His voice cracked on the other end. "It's me. I need to talk to you." I paused, stunned at his nerve. "You shouldn't be calling me." "Please," he said, his voice strained and low. "This is all just... It got out of hand, okay? I didn't mean for it to go this far." "You stole $50,000, I said flatly. "I thought we could move past it," he begged. "I thought you loved me." "I loved the man I thought you were," I replied, "the one who wouldn't rob me blind." I was scared. I panicked. I made a mistake. I didn't even respond. I hung up. A week later, Chloe called again. "He's taken the plea deal," she said. "No jail time, but he has to pay back every dollar, plus fines, community service. And his credit is in shambles." "Fitting," I said. "He always wanted to live rich. Now he can learn how the other half lives." "Honestly," Chloe said, "you're handling this better than most people would." "I'm not angry anymore," I replied. "I'm just... relieved." The man who once thought he could outsmart me was now trapped in a mess of his own making. His charm, useless. His swagger, gone. All that was left was the truth and the consequences. And for once, he couldn't talk his way out of either. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks after Ethan signed the plea deal. When the envelope came in the mail, plain, unassuming, almost too light, I sat at the kitchen table and opened it slowly. I scanned the document until I saw the words I needed: finalized and irrevocable. I let out a long breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The apartment was legally mine. No more legal limbo, no more shared ownership. Just me, the keys, and the freedom to make it mine again. Or really, for the first time. I spent the following weekend redecorating. I painted the walls a rich, calming blue, replaced the sterile furniture Ethan had insisted on with cozy touches that actually felt like home. I cleared the clutter, opened the windows, and let in the light. For the first time in years, the space reflected me, my tastes, my peace. Lauren came over one night with wine and takeout. We sat on the couch laughing, replaying everything from Ethan's arrest to the ridiculous things he'd said. At one point, she looked around and said, "It's wild how different this place feels. It's like he took the heaviness with him." I smiled. That's exactly what he was, a weight. Chloe agreed. When she visited, we finalized some paperwork and celebrated the fact that the financial restitution was officially set. Ethan would be paying off his debt for a long, long time. Work was another surprise blessing. My boss had heard about what happened, not from gossip, but because I used the entire situation as a training case. I presented it during a company seminar on fraud detection, walking through the signs, the mistakes, and the safeguards that stopped Ethan in his tracks. The presentation sparked so much interest that I was asked to help design a new employee protection module. A month later, I got promoted, Head of Fraud Response Strategy, a title that not only recognized my technical skills, but my composure under pressure. For the first time, I felt like my personal and professional life were finally aligned, both built on confidence, clarity, and boundaries. I took a solo trip to the coast. Nothing extravagant, just a quiet cottage, fresh seafood, ocean air. I read books, took long walks, and thought about what life looked like from here on out. No more second guessing. No more trying to fix someone who didn't want to grow. Ethan had called himself a visionary, a dreamer. But I'd done all the building. I'd paid the bills, created the home, and held the marriage together. He hadn't been a partner. He'd been an anchor, tied to an illusion. Now, that weight was gone, and what I had left was mine, earned, steady, and deeply rooted in self-respect. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving, I was thriving. And I knew, without a doubt, I'd never let anyone dim that light again. A month later, I sat out on my balcony with a glass of red wine, the city lights stretching into the distance. The air was warm, still, and finally quiet. No chaos, no arguments, no lies. The apartment was mine, every wall, every window, every inch. It no longer echoed with tension. It felt like freedom. I'd chosen the furniture, the colors, the layout. It felt like stepping into the version of my life I'd always wanted, but never thought I could have. As I scrolled through my inbox, a familiar name appeared. Ethan. I didn't need to open it to know what it was. The subject line said it all. "I'm sorry, please read." I clicked it out of habit. The first sentence was exactly what I expected. Excuses. Regret. A half-hearted attempt at rewriting history. I didn't need it. Without reading further, I hovered over the trash icon and clicked. Gone. Just like him. I leaned back in my chair, eyes on the stars above. For the first time in years, I didn't feel bitter or broken. I felt whole. I didn't need closure from Ethan. I'd already found it in my own strength, my own choices, and the life I was now building without him. I raised my glass to the sky and whispered, "Here's to me. Here's to starting over." And just like that, the chapter closed, not with heartbreak, but with quiet, powerful resolve, the kind that doesn't wait for permission. It simply begins.